If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. On the first, there are some powerful sin eaters called the Cardinal Virtues that walk around the land looking like the fallen warriors of light who caused the flood. At first, people had given up on hunting them down, but after the Warrior of Darkness took down the Light Warden at Holminster Switch and restored the darkness, the Virtue Hunters decided to continue their hunt. And of course you decide to join in because taking down these Light Warden level sin eaters can only be good for the first. The Mikote Lurik is one of those Virtue Hunters, and he recently lost his partner, so he's in the market for another one. Since you look like you know your way around a weapon, you'll make a perfect addition to the team, but only if you're more than just tough looking. Since he's going after one of the 4 virtues, he needs someone strong by his side. At least he's not dumb enough to think he can do this job alone, and even though you look tough, he decides to test your skills before he officially makes you a partner. Out in Lakeland, Lurik pays someone to bring him some bait to lure out a large monster for you to fight, which is kinda stupid because there are monsters everywhere. He didn't need to throw away money like that, but he's rich, so that's his business. You make short work of the creature that shows up, and satisfied with your performance, Reek takes you back to the Crystarium to have a feast to celebrate the birth of your new partnership. After he eats a lot, it's time to talk some business. The virtue that he's after is Andreia, the Sin Eater version of Andreia, the warrior of light who shot Alizé when they came to the source during Heavensward. When she was alive, she was a well-known hunter of great beasts and monsters, and now she's been seen all over the realm, popping up and taking down large beasts. That wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for the fact that the animals she kills turn into Sin Eaters, and since they were already strong beasts, they become even stronger Sin Eaters. Reek chose her because she was the greatest hunter in the world, and beating her would be a good way to get famous. And of course you'd be helping people too, which is why you agree to work with the boy, even though there's a good chance he'll get you killed. Apparently he's hired someone to track down Andreia, and she shows up to let you know that the virtue was recently seen in Amarang. There was some type of spider there that had been a problem for the people before, but is even worse now that she's turned it. Reek pays her for the news, pointing out how it's easier to just pay people to do the detective work than it is to do it yourself. That's true for some things, but not in situations like this. You don't get better if you pawn off responsibilities on other people. But that's not a lesson he'll learn now because you have to head to Amarang to a place called Samiel's Backbone to hunt down Renderei's new spider Sin Eater. The desert is a big place, and while Reek wanted to hire some people to do the searching for him, there's no one around that he can pay, so the two of you split up to track down the creature. You find it, although it's more of a scorpion than a spider, and after you kill it, Renderei shows up. When you see her, the Echo shows you a vision of Renda and 2 other hunters as they track down an elite S-rank hunt monster called Balaam Keats. There's a big bounty on it, which will have the people singing songs about whatever hunter brings it down. And of course they'll be filthy rich too, which is always a plus. Renda and her friends attack, but Balaam drops her with a roar and kills her 2 friends. She survives and vows to take down the creature to avenge them. When the echo fades, Renderei is gone, and Reek is there, extremely confused by the way you were thrashing around. Apparently you don't just sit still when the echo takes over, which means it's a lot more inconvenient than you thought. What if you get a vision while you're standing on the edge of a cliff or something? Might end up waking up dead. When you tell him about your powers and the vision you saw, he swears that he heard that story before, but he can't remember where, so he shrugs it off, and y'all head back to the Crystarium where he buys another meal to celebrate your lack of really accomplishing anything. Reek just likes to spend money as much as Giat likes to drink. He decides to hire some more people to track down leads for him, and while you question his rapid spending of money, he lets you know that it's not a big deal. His hired hands find information that shows that Renderei was seen in Kalusia, where she transformed a giant bear into a Sin Eater, so naturally the 2 of you head out to deal with it. Out in Kalusia, the 2 of you split up again to track down the bear, but it seems like another group of hunters actually beat you to it. The group is led by a man named Landbeard, and the reason his crew beat you there is simple. If someone will sell information to one person, they'll sell it to another, and Landbeard paid the people more to give him the info first. He's more curious about why Reek is working with someone else to hunt Andreia after he had left him, saying how he didn't need help to hunt the virtue. Not like he really cares, since his group will get her first. He leaves, but not before warning you to leave Reek before everything goes bad like he knows it will. Once he's gone, Reek lets you know that he and Lambert had been working together to get stronger so they could take down the virtue, but after realizing that Lambert wasn't that good of a hunter, he decided they couldn't work together anymore. Lambert hadn't liked that, so he'd found his own crew and decided to take the virtue down before Reek just to spite him. Apparently he's good at tracking the eaters, so to make sure he doesn't lose to his old ally, Reek decides that it'll be best if you focused on the virtue herself and not the sin eaters that she turns. Which means it's time to go to the Crystarium, but first he needs to stop in Yulmore, and he wants you to come with him. In the city of debauchery, you meet the source of Reek's money, his parents. He tries to tell his father about what the two of you are working on, but as long as he doesn't ruin the family's good name, his dad doesn't care what he does. He doesn't even give his son any attention. He just tosses him some money to keep him out of his face. His dad is so disinterested that it even irritates the Warrior of Light, especially when you see that what Reek really wants isn't money, but his dad's attention. The boy is so mad that he storms off without even taking the money. Back at the Crystarium, he lets you know that he's a free citizen of Yulmore and enjoyed a very rich, luxurious, and boring life, which is why he left the city and became a bounty hunter. He wanted to keep his upbringing a secret, but since the two of you are working so closely together, he figured it was best that you knew, as long as you keep it to yourself. So now that you know who he is, it's time to get back to your virtue hunt. But since he refused his father's money, you'll have to do the detective work yourselves this time, exactly how you were supposed to do it in the first place. Of course, he won't be able to pay you either, but that wasn't why you were there in the first place. Without his money, Reek has no idea how to seek out leads, but the vision you had of Andreia and her friends could lead to a clue. He had thought he'd heard the story before, and it turns out that his nurse had told it to him when he was a little kid. The story of the hunter and her friends, who went on a quest to take down a great horned beast. They fought it in the desert where it overpowered them, killed her friends, and left her alive to seek vengeance. The story is exactly what you saw, meaning that the hunter who Reek admired the most was actually Andreia. There's more to the story, but he's having a hard time remembering it, so he figures it'll be good to ask Ovara, his former nurse, because it could have a clue that puts you on the right track. Since each of the virtues seem to be driven to do things based off of their memories from the time they were alive, he might be right. Seems like Reek can figure things out on his own when he doesn't have money to just throw at his problems. Ovara lives in Gate Town outside of Yulmore, so that's your next stop. She had been bonded to Reek's family and allowed to live in Yulmore, but once he reached the age where he no longer needed a nurse, she was forced to leave. At least she wasn't made to leave out of a window like some of the other people from the city. She's happy to see her little Reek, but she knows he didn't just drop by to say hi. She didn't, however, expect him to be asking about Andreia, but she definitely remembers the stories. She knew the Warriors of Light had been heroes despite what happened at the end of their lives, and she wanted to keep their stories alive, but since they were all disgraced, she decided to change their names, which confirms for Reek that the reason he had taken up the bow in the first place had been to follow in the footsteps of one of the Warriors of Light. He asked Ovara to tell him about Renda's hunt for the beast that killed her friends again, and she does have some details that help. Renda's hearing had always been beyond the norm, which is what made her such a good hunter. It's also why Balaam's roar had paralyzed her and forced her to watch her friends die. After that, she met Ardbert and the other Warriors of Light, and they all traveled together. They became friends and got stronger. She even learned how to defend herself from sounds like the one Balaam emitted. Then one day, while they were in Raktika, she heard a rumor that Balaam had been seen in the swamps there, and she went after it alone because she didn't want to put any more of her friends in danger to fight this beast. But as the story goes, she didn't need the help anyway. She'd gotten strong enough to solo the creature, and she went back to Ardbert and the others, never telling them what happened, her vengeance complete. Thinking on where you've seen Renda up until now lets you know that she's been following the path of her hunt for Balaam, meaning her next destination is the Raktika Greatwood, and if you're lucky, the two of you can catch her there. With what you and Reek learned from Ovara, you head to the Raktika Greatwood to try and catch Andreia. She indeed shows up, and of course when you get ready to fight, Deco takes over to try and get you killed. You see Renda when she faced Balaam in the woods. However, things are different from the story that you heard. While she was strong enough to take the beast alone in the tail, the way things really went was not good at all. The beast was still too strong for her to beat, but before it could kill her, Ardbert and the others show up, and together they help Renda get her revenge. Lamit wants to know what made her do something so stupid as to attack by herself when it would have been pretty easy to beat the thing if she had just told him from the beginning. So Renda finally tells them about her old partners and how they had hunted creatures all across Novrant together, earning the title of the best hunters in the business. Then they decided to hunt Balam Keats, and it all went bad. Her friends were killed, and she was alone until she met Ardbert and the others. She had planned on telling them and getting their help on her hunt, but she didn't want to lose any more friends fighting the thing, so she kept it to herself. While her feelings are understandable to Ardbert, her running off alone spits in the face of everything they're supposed to mean to each other. It was selfish, especially considering how all of them would have felt if they had shown up to find her dead. Not to mention the fact that she saved all of their lives before, so it's just plain rude to not let them return the favor. Honestly, seeing Renda with Ardbert and the others is like watching the Scions. They're a true team, a family, just like the Source's Warrior of Light and the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, and that makes the ending of their story all the more tragic, especially since you all might share their fate one day. The vision ends after Renda retrieves an odd crystal from beside the fallen creature that Silva tells her to keep as a memento, and when you wake up, Lyrique is not happy. While you were seeing things, the Cardinal Virtue left, and Reek gets so mad that he decides to dissolve your partnership. He'll give you your last payment in Gate Town, and that'll be the end of things. When he gives you the money, he has the audacity to call you a disappointment before he leaves. That has got to be the first time anyone ever said something so insane to a literal god slayer, but Ovara tries to explain the boy's actions. He didn't have any more money to pay you after this little outing, so like all of his friends before, he figured you'd abandon him. So to keep from being sad, he pushed you away himself so he could feel like he abandoned you and not the other way around. Still, she's worried about him. You're the only friend he's had in a while, and he may end up getting depressed and doing something stupid, so she'd like for you to check on him in the Crystarium. He's not in the usual spot, but the mage who was with Lambert, Reek's former partner, is there. He's no longer working with the man on account of him being dead. They fought Andreia, and it went so bad that he ran away, but not before he saw Lambert get back up as a Sin Eater. He tried to stop other people from going after the Virtue, but they didn't listen, and they died too. He saw Reek head out to Raktika, so he's definitely still hunting the Virtue, and he's definitely gonna die. You rush off to Raktika, and fortunately find Reek sitting down looking dazed. He starts to tell you what happened, but the Echo does the work for him. He had confronted Renda, hoping to lay his hero's soul to rest, but she summoned Lambert and a group of other Sin Eaters who bear a striking resemblance to her old friends. He had no chance, but instead of killing him, they all just left. Reek thinks your little trick is useful, even though all that you saw only happened a few minutes ago. He still can't understand why you did it every time Andreia appeared, which, if you can control it, I doubt those would have been the times you picked. Either way, the fact that Renda is rebuilding the Warriors of Light is a serious problem, but Reek doesn't understand why. If she's reliving her hunt of Balam like in the stories, she should be trying to fight it alone. But you know that wasn't true, and when you tell Reek, he realizes that he was making the same mistake Renda had by trying to hunt down a powerful beast on his own. After that, he actually apologizes for how he acted, which, being who you are, you accept without hesitation. So the two of you head back to hunting Renda, who is still likely in the area looking for Balam. But now it's not just her that Reek wants to put down. He may have had issues with Lambert, but he can't let him suffer as a Sin Eater. But first he wants to let Ovara know that he's okay because he knows she sent you. She's happy to see that the two of you have patched things up and are working together again. She obviously cares about Reek more than his own parents do, and to prove it, she's cooked dinner for you, which is far more valuable than money when you're getting ready for a fight, which is exactly what the two of you are about to do. Before the two of you head out to face the Virtue, Reek has a confession to make. He's not nearly as good at fighting as you are. In other news, fire's hot, and a brick to the face hurts. There are about 5 people who aren't gods or immortals that can match the Warrior of Light in combat, so it's not that big of a surprise for someone to be weaker than him. But Reek has gotten stronger since you started working together, so he won't hold you back that much. That was the main reason he dragged your hunt out for so long, which gave Andreia time to form a full dungeon party. But it is what it is, and the two of you will have to deal with them all. However, Ovara does have an idea. Since she was a hunter in her younger years, battle is no stranger to her. In life, Renda had super hearing, so a Sin Eater form should have the same, which means loud noises can disable her and give you time to poke her with sharp objects. All that's left is to find something that can make a noise loud enough to hurt the woman. Before you can head out, one of Reek's dad's servants shows up with the orders for him to quit bounty hunting and come back to Yulmore so he can stop embarrassing his family with his failures. If he refuses, he'll not only lose his money, but his citizenship in Yulmore. With only a little hesitation, he tells the man to tell his dad to kick rocks, and he'll do what he wants with or without their money. They weren't really parents anyway, and he still has Olvara, who was his only real family. With that done, and a quick trip to the Crystarium to get some fire sand to make some noise-making arrows, a trip that forces Reek to do something us poor folk have had to do for ages called fetch quest, he learns what it means to truly be an adventurer, and the two of you head to Raktika to face down Andreia and her Sin-Eaters. She shows up, and fortunately the Echo doesn't try to get you killed this time, so the fighting begins. The noisemaker arrows that Reek made do incapacitate Renda, but her group protects her, forcing you to cut them down first. With them out of the way, you get to face Renda herself. She's strong, obviously, firing off level 3 limit breaks and everything, but the two of you take her down. She leaves behind a crystal, the same one you saw her pick up in the vision, and when you touch it, the real Andreia appears. Well, it's a memory of her. She talks of how she and the others were together through it all, from the hunt to Balam to fighting the Shadowkeeper, even sacrificing their lives to try to save their world, only to fail. She still felt like it was well worth it in the end, though. Reek wants to ask her what she's talking about, but she vanishes, so you fill in the details. Knowing their story hits Reek hard, especially the part where the Warriors of Light died to save the world, only to get labeled as villains. While it's done, Reek is happy to know the truth about the fallen heroes. He had been like everyone else, judging them and never trying to learn the truth. It made it easy to hunt the virtues when he thought of them as the monstrous souls of monstrous people. But knowing the truth, he hopes he helped Andreia finally find some peace. In any case, the hunt is over. The virtue is slain, Andreia is finally at peace, hopefully, and Reek knows the truth about the Warriors of Light, and he wants to push himself to become as courageous as you and Renda, after he helps repay Olvara for all she's done to help him become the man that he is now. In the Crystarium, a few bounty hunters have taken it upon themselves to hunt down some incredibly powerful Sin-Eaters called the Cardinal Virtues. They showed up a few years ago, and they look exactly like the Warriors of Light that caused the flood. They're as strong as the Light Wardens, so fighting them one-on-one would probably lead to a very quick death. There were a few Virtue Hunters around the Crystarium, but they had given up. However, hearing about the Warrior of Darkness taking down a Light Warden kinda gave them a little bit of new motivation, and now they're ready to go again. One of the hunters, a man named Grandson, has a personal grudge against the Virtue, and he's looking for someone to help him take the Sin-Eater down. The Warrior of Light is eager to fight, so he goes to talk to the massive sword-wielding warrior. Grandson can see from the way that you carry yourself that you're no stranger to combat. He's looking for someone like you to join him in his hunt for Dikaiosyne, the Sin-Eater version of the fallen Warrior of Light, Brandon. Obviously, you're willing to join him, and even though you look like you know your way around a blade, Grandson still wants to test you, so the two of you head out to Lakeland so you can deal with a few stray Sin-Eaters. Once you prove that you don't just look like you know how to fight, the two of you make your partnership official and get ready to hunt down Brandon. Grandson doesn't plan on wandering around aimlessly hoping to just bump into the Sin-Eater. Novrant may be small, but it's not that small. Instead, he wants to start by asking around about sightings of the Virtue in a place where he's attacked before, the village called Wright in Kalusia. He doesn't think the Virtue will go back there, but the survivors might know something useful, so the two of you head out. Aside from scaring the people by mentioning the Virtue, you don't learn anything. Grandson half expected as much, but he wanted to come to the village anyway because it's actually important to him. He had been born in Wright. He grew up there, and even though he didn't have much working as a hunter, he did make enough money to provide for his fiancée Melinda. A year ago, Melinda had accepted a job restoring a bracelet that a Yulmoran trader had found called the Fangs of Orthus that had belonged to the royal family of Vobert. Grandson and Melinda had been working on doing the typical family thing, buying land, building a home, having kids and such, and the money for the job would have really helped out, so she got right on it. Grandson had left to get the tools she needed, but when he came back, the Virtue had come to the village and started turning everyone into Sin-Eaters. Melinda got turned right in front of his eyes, right before the Virtue took the Fangs of Orthus and left. Grandson was forced to kill her. From that day on, he vowed to take the Virtue down. Since there's no information to be found in the village, Granson's next plan is to look into why the Virtue wanted the Fangs of Orthus, since the Sin-Eaters don't usually care about stuff like that. And there's no better person to ask than the traitor who had given Melinda the job of repairing the thing in the first place. Granson can't exactly question the man himself, because he doubts saying that a sin eater stole his priceless artifact would pass the smell test. The traitor would likely say that Granson stole it himself and have him arrested, so it's better that you go. The traitor is hanging out in the beehive in Yulmore, and he's glad to tell you about the fangs because he hopes that you'll bring it back to its rightful owner if you find it, meaning him. He had bought it from a peddler who claimed that it was a relic from Vobert. It really was, so the man sent it to Wright to get restored so he could sell it and make a lot of money, and you know what happened after that. The trader's been checking his contacts to see if anyone's tried to sell the fangs. They haven't, but he has heard about a similarly designed piece of jewelry popping up in Mortsuk. He was going to send someone to look into it, but since you're checking it out, he lets you know that he'll give a big reward if you help him get the fangs back. The Warrior of Light heads back to Granson to let him know what he found, and the two of you quickly head off to Mortsuk because it's likely the Virtue will attack the place if there's an artifact like the fangs there. When you arrive, it's clear that no attack has happened, and after asking around, you find out that a peddler hasn't sold the artifact yet. He found out that it was worth a whole lot of money, so he's still trying to haggle prices while he's out looking for more treasure. His wife doesn't realize just how much danger he's in, so you and Granson race off to find the man. You find him right as the Virtue attacks him. He turns him into a Sin Eater, takes the relic, and vanishes. There's nothing you can do for the peddler other than put him out of his misery. Granson had run into another Sin Eater that the Virtue recently made, and when you tell him what happened to the peddler, he's not too happy about it. It's just like what happened to his fiancée, and unfortunately, he has to go let the peddler's wife know that her husband won't be coming home. She takes the news as badly as one might expect, and after the woman stops crying, she tells Granson where her husband had found the choker. A year ago, he and some friends took a trip to Ilmeg to search some ruins for treasure. There was plenty to be found, but for some reason they forgot about the Fae that live in the area. They did a lot of bad stuff to the trespassers, but the ones that survived came home with 2 of 3 sacred treasures of the ancient royal family. One of those relics was the Fangs of Orthus, which ended up in the hands of the Yulmoran merchant, which led to the attack on Wright, and the other relic was a choker called the Eyes of Orthus that just caused the attack outside of Mortsuk. There's one artifact left called the Claws of Orthus. Since the Virtue is clearly after them, Granson figures that if the two of you find it, then you should be able to draw the Virtue out. But the claws are still in Ilmeg, and the Fae folk aren't all that welcoming to outsiders. Fortunately, the Warrior of Light is on good terms with the Fae, which makes the trip relatively easy. Since the Numo were part of the Vobertite society, the best place to find information is their village, so you take Granson to Plaini, where the Dog Fae live. Most of the Numo have no idea where the Claws of Orthus could be, but one of them, Su'ul, served the royal family before the flood. If anyone knows where the artifact is, it will be Su'ul. So you and Granson go to have a chat with the Dog Fae. As soon as the two of you lock eyes, the echo takes over and you see Su'ul talking to Brandon about a young girl who had been transformed into a monster. She was the 5th person that had turned up like that, and after studying her remains, Todrick, the court mage, could feel the remnants of strong magic that had been used to transform the girl. Whoever had cast the spell was no low-level mage. Todrick promises to figure out who's behind the magic, but until then, he wants Brandon and the other knights to put down anyone who shows signs of turning. Brandon's not so eager to cut down the people of his homeland without at least looking for a way to save them, but his primary job is to protect the royal family, so if that forces him to cut down people who he might have known, then he'd do what he had to. Princess Saldia heard them talking, and she refuses to turn a blind eye to her people's suffering just to keep herself safe. She's going to find the person responsible, and she plans on leading the investigation herself. That's an extremely irresponsible thing for a leader to do, and Su'ul tries to point that out, but she ignores the Numo and decides to make Brandon her personal guard while she investigates. He agrees, partially because he doesn't have a choice, and partially because men from every shard will do stupid things to please a pretty woman. And this is a very stupid thing. The vision ends and both Su'ul and Granson demand an explanation about why you were holding your head and acting like you were in pain, so you tell them about your vision. Su'ul is shocked to learn about your vision, but the Numo saw something like it before with Brandon. Granson doesn't understand, and the Numo doesn't explain, but since you piqued its curiosity, it gives you the opportunity to explain what you want. When you tell it about your hunt for the Virtue, it sends you off to fight some monsters to prove that if you lured the Virtue out with the claws, you'd actually be able to beat it. Honestly, the Fae is just using you to clear some monsters away from its favorite bathing spot. As for Grandson, the Numo has an entirely different task for him. You deal with the creatures pretty easily, and the Numo admits that the creatures weren't sin eaters, but victims of the curse that you saw in your vision. Of course, it won't say anything else until Grandson finishes his task. He eventually gets to it, but he just has a hard time taking orders from a dog. It's probably not a good idea to be disrespectful to someone that you're trying to get to do a favor for you, but the insult doesn't stop Su'ul from answering Granson's questions. Since the Numo and Brandon look like they were friends in your vision, Grandson figures that Su'ul could give you some type of hint as to what the Virtue's plan might be. But the Sin Eater that is running around with Brandon's body is not the fallen warrior of light. Not entirely, but he does still seem to be trying to fulfill his duty as a knight, even in death. Even dying couldn't stop him from being a loyal friend. Grandson is not exactly happy to hear anything good being said about the thing that ruined his life, but what Su'ul wants him to understand is that no matter what the Virtue is doing, it is still just a mindless monster. Holding a grudge against it like it's set out to purposefully ruin his life won't make his situation better. You can't talk logic to someone who's overly emotional, and the changes the Virtue made to Granson's life would have made anybody emotionally unstable. If you go into a fight blinded by emotion against something as powerful as the Virtue, you'll die. So the Numo refuses to tell Grandson where the Claws of Orthus are, which makes the man actually threaten to beat the information out of the Fae. He's even willing to fight you when you tell him to calm down, which is another example of how being emotional can make you do stupid things. The man could be angry enough to go Super Saiyan and he still couldn't beat you. Su'ul wants the Sin Eater that's walking around in his friend's body put down just as badly as Grandson does, so his friend can rest in peace. It decides that this is a good time to tell the two of you a story, so you follow the Fae, with Grandson complaining the whole way. During the time of the Kingdom of Vobert, the palace outside in Ilmeg was called Greenwich Licht. It was the home of the royal family, and the place where Brandon had been in your vision. There was a lot more to that story though, and it did not end well. Brandon was a new knight when Princess Saldia had dragged him into the role of personal bodyguard. He was good, but his inexperience led to the princess getting hurt on one of her outings. Because of his failure, Brandon was kicked out of the knights, and after that, he left the kingdom. Su'ul thought the two of them would never see each other again, but Brandon eventually returned with Ardbert and his friends to investigate the transformations that had gotten worse during the time that Brandon was away. Saldia was happy to see him, and during the time that he was there, the two of them started to get very close. It wasn't long after that they all learned that Todrick was the one behind the magical plague. The Echo takes over, and you get to experience the next part firsthand. Brandon and the other Warriors of Light confront Todrick, who turns his own followers into monsters to use against them. Once Brandon and the others are dead, there won't be anyone left who can stop him from taking the throne. While he is a powerful mage, and his creatures are extremely deadly, Ardbert, Brandon, and the others put him down. With his dying breath, he hits Saldia with a spell causing her to transform into a monster, but before she loses herself completely, she asks Brandon to put her out of her misery. He doesn't want to, but he does it as a last act of service to the princess. When the vision ends and you tell Grandson and Su'ul what you saw, Grandson realizes that Brandon had to put down the woman he loved, just like he did. Their stories are nearly the same, which is why the Numo decided to tell it to you. It had gone to serve Saldia after she had protected it from a wild beast. That was a debt that could never be repaid, and even though she's long dead, Su'ul still tries to act in a way that she would have wanted, which is why it was trying to help Grandson come to grips with his emotions. If vengeance and hatred was the only thing he lived for, then even if he got what he wanted, he'd be an empty, broken man once it was all done, and Saldia wouldn't want that for any of her people. It takes a moment for him to accept it, but he realizes that even Melinda wouldn't have wanted him to live that way. She would have wanted him to be happy and have a life, not just be consumed by hunting her murderer until he was just as dead on the inside as she was on the out. He still plans on dealing with the Virtue, but not just for his own sake. He wants to give Brandon the peace that he deserves. Since Grandson finally seems to have his head on straight, Su'ul is finally willing to talk about the relics that the Virtue is hunting. The three relics together show that the owner has the right to rule Vobert. Since Saldia was the last of her bloodline, when she died the relics were buried with her, but a year ago some thieves broke into the tomb and got away with two of the relics. The Virtue sensed what had happened, and his instincts kicked in, and he set out to retrieve Saldia's property. Su'ul knows where the third relic is, and he's positive that if you get it, Brandon will come for you. He hid it with a bit of magic, but he gives you some power that will get rid of that spell, so you and Grandson head off to retrieve the artifact. The plan is to take the artifact off somewhere to set up a trap for Brandon, but he appears as soon as you touch it. Since there's no longer any choice, the two of you face off against the fallen Warrior of Light. The fight is very likely a taste of what people would have to deal with if our Warrior of Light finally decided to go on a murder spree, and adding the powers of a Sin Eater to what Brandon already had makes it a fight that pushes you and Granson to the limit. But the two of you manage to bring down the Sin Eater, finally allowing Brandon to rest and giving Granson a bit of peace as well. The fallen Virtue leaves behind the other two relics, so the two of you bring them back to Su'ul so the new Mo can lay them to rest with Saldia. Back at the Crystarium, with his mission accomplished, Granson decides that since he's a better fighter than most, he can spend his time traveling and helping people in need, similar to the Warriors of Light, and he thinks that would make his fiancée proud. This concludes the story of the Shadowbringers tank role quest. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, ding that notification bell, join the Discord, and if you really want to show your support, you can donate to the channel through the link in the description. Until next time guys, later.